Good evening, everybody. I am delighted that my friend Ori Spado is with us tonight. Some of you who've been on the channel for a while may remember we did an interview about 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a while. But Ori spent time in the MDC, where Diddy is. Ori has, let's say, a connection with the guy who, what's his name now? Phil
Charlie.
Pines.
Oh, Phil
Yeah,
Pine.
yeah.
Phil
We're going
Pine.
to talk.
Very close
We're going to talk
relationship.
we're going to talk about his involvement with Diddy and Ori's YouTube channel link is. I'm going to put that in the description box right now, and I would urge people to go over. He's got quite a lot of followers on Instagram as well. He's got his website and he's got his book, and he's got a fascinating backstory himself. So, huge thank you for coming on.
Hey, Shaun, you're all the way over there across the pond, and I got to commend you. You're getting better known about Diddy than anybody over here.
we have had quite a
Yeah.
range of guests on talking about Diddy and Jay-Z.
Jay-Z, yeah, I don't know much about Jay-Z, and I don't know his tie into this situation. I don't know if anybody's got it accurate. You might probably know more than I do, you know. Uh, but you saw the HBO special, The Fall of Diddy. It was a great special they did. And you saw Phil Pines. Now, I have known Phil Pines for 7 or 8 years, maybe longer, because he is close friends with my son. And I hope everybody saw him on, but he was in the music business and the managerial aspect before he took that job. I believe he was a manager, but he was involved in the music business. And he's probably one of the nicest young men that anybody could meet. But working for Diddy is such a control freak that nobody could even imagine. Now, I'll tell you a story. When this took it, his at Diddy's home in Miami. Now, Phil, as you saw, he was the guy you had to make sure. All right, all right. My son's telling me to clean my camera. I'm doing the best I could, Anthony. Is that better?
Yeah, you're doing good. You're doing good. You're fine.
Okay. Sure.
You're fine,
But
Ori.
anyhow, Phil gets everything set up for Diddy, goes home with his significant other, wants to relax, and he gets a text from Diddy. You got to come back and pick up my remote. His remote for his TV. So Phil has to go all the way back to the house, go up to Diddy's bedroom. Diddy's in bed with a girl. The remote's on the floor. Phil had to pick up the remote and hand it to him. You think Diddy would have bent over and picked the damn thing up himself? That's how much of a control freak this guy is. And, most people thought it was an honor to go work for this guy for who he was and everything until they started working for him. And, you know, I only met Diddy one time many, many years ago at a nightclub here in Los Angeles. And I met him through Jimmy Henchman. I think you probably know who Jimmy Henchman is. Jimmy was a dear friend of mine. and he's doing life in prison now. I'm starting to see Jimmy's name circulating over here in different things relating. I don't know if it's true, it's not true, relating to the murder of Tupac and Biggie. I'm sure you heard them. Right, Shaun? You know, Shaun, you got the honor. You know, Diddy's suing you. I mean, that's a big honor.
Well, Ori, I was named. I'm not being sued. He's suing one of my podcast guests, Courtney Burgess, and he's suing his Courtney Burgess's lawyer, Ariel Mitchell. They were both on my channel saying stuff, so they're suing them because they said stuff on my channel.
Wait, now, is that the lawyer? I couldn't figure out if he was a lawyer or a comedian. I watched your show yesterday. That guy is he went into Hollywood and he was accurate. He was correct in everything he said. I got to tell you, but he did it in such a funny way. I laughed like and you know what? I sent it to my director and writer of my script, and it was. I said, you got to watch this because we happened to have that conversation yesterday afternoon when we had a meeting here about Hollywood, and here's this guy telling everything about it. Yeah.
That was Lionel. He's an ex-prosecutor. He's an ex-prosecutor, Lionel.
Yeah, is that his name?
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah, well, tell him he's got to come out here and be at the comedy club. I'll buy the first ticket.
Before we talk more about Diddy stuff, Ori, the viewers are asking, who are not familiar with your story, what your story is.
Say again?
The viewers are asking, what is your story?
Ask him what my story is?
Yeah.
Your friend?
No, the viewers.
My story about my life?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, first thing I want to correct, okay? A lot of people calling me the mob boss of Hollywood. Now, I never considered myself the mob boss, okay? Now, everybody's got me associated with Sonny Franchise out of New York, who I knew for close to 50 years. But who I was closer to was Jimmy Cacci, the underboss of Los Angeles. And I'm going to say this, some people might get hurt. Ounce for ounce, Jimmy Cacci was probably one of the best men you ever wanted to meet. Tough guy. Yeah, he was a skipper, originally from Buffalo, New York. And he and I made a lot of money together. Now, the boss of Los Angeles, his name was Pete Milano. I had met Pete on 2 occasions. And then there was something else that happened with me and another gentleman at a bar here in Beverly Hills one night. And the individual said something to me. And I used to carry back in those days. And I took 2 bullets out, put them on the bar, and said, "This is all it takes." And he got wind of that and never liked me after that. But what happened was when Jimmy's brother was Bobby Milano, who was married to Keely Smith. Everybody should know Keely Smith. And Bobby's real name was Charlie Cacci. Charlie was dying, and I went down to Palm Springs on a Saturday. and saw Charlie, and Keely was there, plus Charlie's girlfriend, Jimmy, his sister, brother-in-law, so forth. And never remember it. I'll never forget that, Remy. His sister and brother-in-law came out of the bedroom. They said, Ori, Charlie like to talk to you. So I went back in the bedroom, big king size. Charlie laying down. I laid down and I held his hand. I said, Charlie, I know what you're worried about. I said, don't worry. I will take care of your brother. And he just tightened his grip on my hand. He says, Ori, you promise. I said, I know that's what's bothering you. He says, Ori, you promise. I said, I promise. He said, Ori, because your promise is the best in the world. I said, Charlie, don't worry about Jimmy. I'll take care of him. All I want you to do, concentrate on getting better so I can have you performing down at the Queen Mary. That was a Saturday. On Sunday, I flew to New York. Monday morning, Charlie passed away. They had a service one day down in Palm Springs. And I kept my promise. After the service in Palm Springs, they flew Charlie's body to Buffalo, and that's where the wake funeral was for 4 or 5 days. It was a big event. And I drove from New York City to Buffalo. And I was with Jimmy every day from morning to night. But the first thing that Jimmy tells me, he says, Ori, he says, you're not going to believe this. He says, Pete sent 2 guys down to pay his respects to my brother. He said, and they had a message to me that I was to talk to you because everybody thinks that you are the mob boss of Hollywood. And that's how it began. All right. From the boss sticking on the hot. Now, that's the kind of boss he was, right? If he's got think too much about himself, I guess. I don't know. But that's how it began. And it hasn't stopped. But I never considered myself the mob boss. Yes, I did my own thing here. I don't bother nobody. I don't want nobody to bother me. And that's how I did things. So I wanted to correct that situation for everybody.
What is the relationship between the mafia and Hollywood?
Huh? What's the relationship? People don't understand. It's been a lifelong since the beginning of Hollywood. Okay? You know, everybody wants to say Frank Sinatra, who I know, Dean Martin, who I know, and many others. They are saying, I'm reading some of these things, all right, that these guys were in the mob. What people don't realize, no, they were not in the mob. They began, we owned all the nightclubs back in those days. This is where they sang. That's where they got their beginnings. So they got to know us. Okay? It was a great thing. And so, you know, Frank wasn't in the mob. Yeah, he was connected. Dean was, they knew people. That's it. Like you know people. Okay? Everybody knows somebody. It don't put you someplace. Okay? But, you know, anybody remember Decca Records? You do?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you do, Shaun. I bet none of the people listening ever heard of Decca Records. What is Decca Records today? It's Universal Studios. Okay? Began in New York. Decca Records. So who owned it and who controlled it? The old guys in the mob did. So there's always been problems in Hollywood. There's always been gangsters around, and people love gangster movies. And so there's been a lot of movies about gangsters. Uh, you got two coming out. One this month. Well, it's not a gangster movie. It was funnier than hell. Comeback Trail with Robert De Niro. And then in March, you got Alto Nights, written by Comeback Trail is written and directed by George Gallo, who's wrote and who's directing my film. And Alto Nights is written by Nick Pileggi, who's a dear friend of mine who wrote Casino and Goodfellas. And Alto Nights is about Frank Costello and Vito Genovese, and De Niro is playing both of them. And you shut this damn phone off. And so that's coming out March 21st. Everybody be able to see that movie.
You've got a question, Ori, from Monica. How much of the mob still controls Hollywood today?
The mob does not control Hollywood. Okay? They have no control on it, like you think, like people think. Okay? As far as the mob here in California, not much of any presence here anymore. Okay? It's almost all gone. And, the mob has changed since the old days, like the guys. I knew Frank Costello. I knew Carlo Marcello. People like that there. You're going way back, Meyer Lansky days. And, those were the real days of the mob. Everything after that it's all changed. Everybody's become an informant. And YouTube's full of informants. YouTube with the gangster genre actually was made by the informants. So what are those informants doing? They're training all their listeners how to be an informant. Okay, see, I was in the mob, but I informed. I'm out of it. Okay, I put 100 people in prison. That's what the fuck they're doing. All right.
Did the corporations buy the mafia out of Hollywood?
No. Not nobody bought the mafia out of anything except Las Vegas. All right, Las Vegas was taken over by the corporation. I personally, I don't like Las Vegas nowadays. People love it because they don't know what it was back in the old days. But I started going there in the late 60s. I never paid for a drink. I never paid for a meal. I never paid for a room. I never paid to see a show. And when you walked in the casino, first worker and that employee and that casino saw you. Hey, Ori, how you doing? Great to see you. They knew everybody's name. They took care of the people. Gambling was the number one revenue. But corporations take it over. Gambling is no longer the number one revenue. Hotel rooms are. Can't get comped like you did back in those days.
You got a question from...
Yeah, it was so much fun. You dressed up. It was a classy thing to go to the casino. Everybody was dressed. You didn't see no children. Today, it's just a vacation spot for families. They go there.
You've got a question from Hamamoto. Did you know Mickey Cohen? My father took me to meet him at his Beverly Hills home.
Really? No, I did not know Mickey. But I did go to his home and I did do a story about Mickey. Okay, Mickey was a really tough guy, had a lot of control here in Los Angeles. You know, him and Bugsy, Benjamin Siegel. All right. They were two Jewish guys, had a lot of control with the syndicate. That was a syndicate now. Okay. That was not the mafia. You got to understand the difference between the syndicate and the mafia. It's a big difference.
All right. And for the viewers, then, I see Professor Hamamoto. I've sent you an email. Viewers, would you like Hamamoto to come on to talk about the Grammys? Put one in the chat, and we will endeavor to do that. So Natalie has got a question for you. What do you know about Marilyn Monroe and her death?
What do I know about it? Well, I had nothing to do with it. Let me get that out there first. Okay. I believe that she was murdered, given an overdose. All right. And there's been a lot of stories about it, and this and that, and who actually did it, they're never going to know. So it's just going to become like Jimmy Alpha, a conspiracy theory. JFK, will we know when our government's going to come out finally with the paperwork on JFK? Are they going to be telling us the truth in there? Are those papers going to be redacted? There's a lot to that story. Okay. Who was at the grassy knoll? I seen pictures many years ago about two gentlemen at that grassy knoll. Johnny Roselli and Jimmy Fratiano were there. That's what I was told. I saw a picture of them there. A friend of mine had that. That has to be 40 years ago. I saw that. The Kennedys, powerful family. Old man Kennedy made a lot of money, dealt a lot with Frank Costello. He ended up being able to take that there, going legitimately. I forget what liquor company that the whole family still gets a percentage of every bottle that comes over. There's no question that it was the mob that got Kennedy in as president. No question about that there. Nobody's ever disputing that. But old man Kennedy made his son Jack put his brother Bobby in as the head of the Department of Justice. And the first thing he did was go after the very same people that put him in office. So, what's the truth? What's not the truth? Nobody's alive to tell you. You hear different people telling you different things. Okay? I've heard different things. I was in a room with some of those names that I mentioned previously. Sometimes in life, you got to be careful who you cross because you never know who you're crossing. It might be the quietest guy, but it might be that quiet guy that's going to do the most damage. So you don't know.
Very, very wise words. Do you think that the CIA contracted the mob with JFK?
The CIA is involved, absolutely. I believe it was the CIA that put Johnny Roselli, in that barrel down in Miami. All right, that killed him. Johnny Roselli, he was Very powerful individual, very smart, well liked in Hollywood, had a lot, he was a powerhouse out here in Las Vegas. Okay. And people don't realize how close he was to Howard Hughes. Now, back in the day, Howard Hughes was who Elon Musk is today, I guess. Okay. Howard Hughes was, I remember back in the day, were only 3 billionaires in the world, and Howard Hughes was one of them. Okay. But when he went into Vegas and started buying hotels, he couldn't just buy them like that. All right. Jimmy Roselli arranged it with, boy, I'm going blank on the name. The guy that was with a former CIA guy that was with Howard Hughes. His name had come to me. Forgive me, folks. I am 80 years old. I do have a senior moment once in a while, not like Joe Biden, but I can't remember his name. But then again, so that same CIA agent is when they wanted to get rid of Castro and how all that began. It all works and ties in together. Okay. I happen to know that the CIA, they use guys like myself and others for certain things when they wanted something and needed something done. Okay. It's not like they did it once, they did it many times. Okay. They're very smart back in those days, anyways. I don't know how they are today. I stay away from that there.
Keith wants to know if you knew Jack Ruby.
No, I did not know Jack Ruby, but there's another name. Jack Ruby was very well mob connected. Okay. So it was no accident. Okay. It's no accident that Ruby was at the jailhouse that day and killed the guy that they think shot Kennedy.
Oswald. So Chantel, have you watched Oliver
Oliver
Stone's
Stone,
movie JFK?
JFK, accurate. I can't even remember it. I did see it. I happen to know Oliver, nice guy. I can't really talk about that, whether it's accurate. Oliver does a good job and he does great research. So I'm going to assume it's fairly accurate.
Were you ever close to Frank Sinatra, and did he have a few people whacked?
I was close to Frank Sinatra, and Frank never had nobody whacked.
Any Sinatra stories?
Oh, I tell the same story all the time. Everybody's heard them. I used to meet first how I met Frank was through Jimmy Cacci. Because Jimmy Cacci and guys down, Jimmy was the boss of Palm Springs. They took all the action. Frank was a big gambler. And one time he lost $500,000 in one weekend. He couldn't tell his wife about it. So he was late in paying. So I met him with Jimmy. He said, give me a few days. And he got the money. Guess who gave him the money? Dean Martin. Dean was very smart with his money. Made a lot of money, Dean. So did Frank, obviously. Frank was a nice guy. He was an amazing individual. Everybody knows he was one of the greatest singers ever on this earth, at least in my era. And I get my son's car, and my son says, "Siri, play Frank Sinatra music." My son does that all the time for me. All right. And he knows all that technology stuff. And Frank comes on the radio. I love it. I used to meet Frank at Mateo's restaurant on Westwood Boulevard in Westwood. Sunday night was the night to go there. Mateo, Frank put the money in to help Maddie start that restaurant. Frank actually owned half of it. And then it's just the kind of guy Frank is. One day he just told Maddie, you own it all. And he gave all the stock to Maddie for nothing. Okay? Didn't want his money back. It's how we did things in those days, folks. Okay? You came to me, you need a few grand, sure, here. Okay? It's how we did things. Today, people don't do that. They don't help each other out. You know, everybody wants to con people out of something. It's terrible. But no, Frank was a gentleman. One night we're walking out of the restaurant. Now Frank couldn't smoke around his wife, so I sat on the smoking side back in those days. He was on the other side, and then when he come out, he and I would meet at the bar, and we would sit there and smoke and have a drink. And but one night we left there, and we're at the valet waiting for our car. And the valet brings Frank's car. And Frank had $100 that he was going to tip the guy. And he told the young man, he says, what's the biggest tip you ever got? And the guy says, $100, sir. But Frank goes back in his pocket and takes out another 100. And he gives the guy 200. And then he says, by the way, kid, he says, who gave you the 100? You did, sir.
You're getting asked if you've heard of Clive Davis. Clive Davis.
I met Clive Davis, okay, when he was showcasing Alicia Keys. I think it was at the Rainbow on Sunset Boulevard here. That was a long time ago. And I'm going to tell you, I'm so tone deaf, you wouldn't believe it. And he was showcasing, she wasn't big. And I made a remark to somebody yesterday. I think this is going to be Clive's first failure. Oh, boy, was I wrong, huh?
Getting asked about Nat King Cole.
Nat King Cole. Oh, I used to listen to him at San Francisco at the Fairmont Hotel. Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah.
What about Woody Harrelson? Sorry, keep going.
Woody Harrelson's dead. No, I didn't know him. No, he's doing life in prison.
What were you going to say about Nat King Cole? Sorry.
No, I wasn't going to say nothing about. I didn't really know him. I used to listen to him. You know, I met him, but that's about it. You know, I met a lot of people, but could I say I know them? Huh?
What about Jimmy Hoffa?
Jimmy Hoffa. I could tell you this: Jimmy Hoffa was never put in a barrel and delivered to New York. Okay, not in a million years. I venture to say that Jimmy Hoffa, from when he was picked up at that restaurant, all right, died within 30 to 40 minutes afterwards, and that his body was put in an incinerator and burned, and they will never find him. And to back that up, there was a place with incinerators that happened to have a fire a few weeks afterwards in Detroit. Jimmy Hoffa was just a guy that thought things. All right.
Do you think Davis Jr. lost his eye in a car accident, or is the rumor true he made a wrong move and they took his eye?
No, he lost in a car accident. Okay, just like they say. You know, there's so many conspiracies. All right. All right. And did I ever meet Elvis Presley personally? No, I did not. But back in the days when he was in Las Vegas at the International Hilton, I'll tell you a little story. I used to go to Stardust, and I was there with my wife, my cousin, and his wife. And me and my cousin were gambling. We had reservations to see Elvis. And me and my cousin were already dressed, and the girls come out there dressed. They said, "We're all ready." I said, "All right, you got a lot of time. You girls go over there. We'll meet you at the Hilton, all right?" So me and my cousin, we get done. We go meet them. There's a long, long line waiting to go in to see Elvis. And there's my wife, Antoinette, and my cousin's wife. His name happened to be her name was Antoinette also. And they're at the end of the line. And I go, "What are you doing back here? You don't have to wait in line. Come with me." So they come, we all go, we get to the door. "Mr. Spado, how are you? We have your table ready." Right there in front of the stage. Could have touched Elvis. We didn't, of course, but I'm going to tell you, he was awesome. I did get to meet his wife, and I was good friends with his left-hand man, Joe Esposito, all right, who we met. You know, Joe was originally from Chicago. They met when Elvis was in the army. He was Elvis's, I said left hand, he was his right hand man. Okay, and he's the one who found Elvis dead in Memphis at Elvis's home.
Chantel, what was the best decade of your life and why? Best time of your life.
The best decade of my life. Yeah. You know, I got to tell you something. I would not give up for anything. My younger years, growing up in a small town of rural New York with my mom and dad, those were great times. Uh, you know, my time in the military, I try to look at life as though my life is a good life. I lived a different life than most people. I've been involved in a lot of different things. I've had very legitimate businesses where I made millions of dollars. I lost it all. Okay. But, you know, I'm 80 years old and I keep coming back. I keep resurrecting myself. I don't stop, and I will not stop until the day that I die. It's within me. I've been hustling all my life. You know, I began as a paper boy and went on. I have not stopped hustling. And it's just something that I love doing. It's the idea, it's the game. Uh, you know, of course, I'm in a new era here that I don't like. I do not like technology. I hate technology. And I think technology is going to be the thing that will destroy the world. It's not going to be a great fire or a big flood. Okay. It's going to be technology because the day will come that it all be shut off and people don't know how to talk to their neighbors no more. People don't even know who their neighbors are. People were afraid to walk down the street. People got to lock their doors. I didn't grow up that way. We never locked our doors. We knew our neighbors. Okay. I mean, went on the street, you played kickball, we fought, we did everything. Okay? It's just so disgusting today that you walk around and everybody's got this phone. You got to be careful driving because people crossing the street, they're not looking at the cars. They're looking because they think they're a big shot on their phone. Okay? And that person they talk to that nobody knows might be the most important person in their life, but nobody else knows that person. You know, you go into a restaurant, you see a guy, young guy and gal out on a date. They're both holding their phones. They're not talking to each other. I mean, for me to come on here to hit for, if you didn't send me that, I don't know what to do. Okay. I did that. I didn't know anything about that interview with that prison guard I did today. Unfortunately, you know, the rain, the girl got here late, setting things up. You know, we had some, she even, with what she knows, she has some technical problems. She's got to fix it up. It's got to be reposted. So it's not going to be like it should have been. You know, I was looking forward to this prison guard to talk about exactly, and remember, don't forget everybody, I'm the one, all right? Diddy changed his name a million times, but it was Ori Spado that gave him the name Punk Diddy. Okay, don't forget that. He is
So,
he's a woman abuser and he's everything else. And you know, he still thinks he's that in his head. Okay, but in prison he's being treated like every other inmate. He's no different. He's an inmate. Get over it, Diddy. Okay, he expects because he's Diddy that he should get special treatment. It's not going to happen.
let me just explain. Let me explain, Ori. Ori has just interviewed a guard at the MDC in disguise, and you'll be able to watch that. The link for Ori's socials and his channels in the description box. And Ori also spent time in MDC, where Diddy is housed. Why were you in MDC, Ori?
I was there on a Colombo crime family racketeering indictment. Got arrested in 2008. And I spent 30 months in MDC, Brooklyn. So I know it very well. It was bad when I was there. I heard it's 100 times worse. Now, there's two buildings there, the east and west. We refer to them as the old and new. The old is dorms. It's just one giant big room that's got like 120 guys in it. Your bathroom, your kitchen, your toilets, everything in one room. So you can be going to the bathroom and somebody's eating, all right behind you. All right, that's how it was. In the winter time, they had the heat on so high you couldn't take it. And then in summer, the air conditioner was so cold you froze all the time. So there's no comforts about being in prison. But like she said, because she remembered me, he remembered me. We changed her voice to a female. But remember when I was there, I accepted the fact that I was in prison. Okay? And there's certain rules in prison. Keep your mouth shut. All right? I never ask another person. I never say, hey, Shaun, what'd you get indicted for? All right? And I don't go up and say I got indicted for this. Okay? Because you don't know who you're talking to in prison. Because you might be talking to a rat. So you got to be very careful. But you got to be respectful. You got to be respectful of other inmates, no matter who they are. And, you know, it's a mindset. You did time, Shaun, so you know. Okay? This is what it is. So you got to get used to it. Will a guy like Diddy ever get used to it? I don't think so. Okay. He better, because I think that's where he's going to be spending the rest of his life. But I don't think he could. Mentally, he'd never be able to take it.
What was the most surprising things that this prison guard told you that was working at MDC?